Sometimes all we want is more of the same, like another round of golf played from a channel with 24/7 coverage, another look at the garden, and the deer as they pick their way through it, another Taco Tuesday, followed by a whatever's in the fridge Wednesday. And to get more of the same, all we need is a little help. With adaptable care plans from qualified, compassionate caregivers matched to your family's needs, Home Instead can help you and your passions stay home, no matter what's on your horizon. Visit Home Instead online for a better what's next.
Oh yeah, look at my life, hey now, yeah. Oh yeah, look at my life out here on the road.
Hey now. Hi, everybody. Welcome to a brand new week of Scott Fox After 9. If you were away for the March break, welcome back. I had a whole bunch of great episodes last week. I hope you get a chance to go back and check some of them out because there was some real good stuff in there. And coming up this week, there's a lot going on. We might be a little bit closer to an end of the military action in the Middle East based on a tweet that came out this morning from President Trump. He says he's talking to the Iranian regime about possibly reopening the Strait of Hormuz, which would be wonderful news because our gas prices are absolutely sickening in Canada right now. You would never know that we have some of the most oil reserves in the world. You'd never know it because we're paying prices like countries that have no oil. And it's very, very frustrating for a lot of people. That is the number one thing that people are in my DMs about over the last 48 hours is gas prices and why it is the way it is when we have so much oil here in Canada. But that's not going to be the focus of today's episode. There's a number of things that I want to get to, including a full recap of Pierre Poilievre's trip to America. He was there last week. You likely know he was on the Joe Rogan Experience. He also sat down and did a really great interview with Bloomberg. I'm going to give you just the Coles notes on this episode of Scott Fox After 9. Just the Coles notes. I know there's a lot of people who have seen a clip or two here and there on social. Not as many people sat down and watched the whole 2.5-hour interview with Pierre on Joe Rogan. So I'm just going to give you the most important parts, the ones that people are talking about, and the ones that I think can give Canadians a little bit of hope about our future, because I know that things are not looking good right now. In particular, I'm thinking about the folks that work at Algoma Steel. Layoffs begin today. We are talking about a small town that is the number one employer, and about 1,000 families after today aren't going to know how they are going to put food on the table for their family. So, I mean, I'm thinking about everybody who's affected by job losses right now. It really is a sad thing. It shouldn't be this way, but this is the situation that Canada finds itself in. I'll play those Pierre Poilievre clips coming up very, very soon. Before I get to that, though, tragedy that happened overnight. An Air Canada flight from Montreal to LaGuardia Airport in New York, making its final approach. It lands on the runway and then, bam, crashes right into a fire truck that was on the runway. Now, as I record, things are still coming down, but I want to give you just the latest that I have here in front of me so we can at least get started in figuring out what happened here. I'm going to start off with the air traffic control audio. This is about 1 minute and 15 seconds long. Listen to this.
Southwest 3988.
LaGuardia Tower from Trust 7.
Frontier 4195, amend your climb out. LaGuardia 7 departure, Coney climb off of runway 13.
Tower Delta 2603, ILS 4.
2603, stand by. Who's the vehicle needed to cross the runway?
Truck 1 and Company, LaGuardia Tower.
Truck 1 and Company.
Truck 1 and Company, LaGuardia Tower, requesting to cross 4 at Delta.
Truck 1 and Company, cross 4 at Delta.
Truck 1 and Company, crossing 4 at Delta.
Frontier 4195, just stop there, please. Stop, truck 1, stop. Stop, truck 1, stop. Stop, truck 1, stop. Delta 2603, go around, runway heading 2000. Jet 646. Jet 646, I see you collide with a vehicle here, just hold position. I know you can't move. The vehicles are responding to you now.
Is the runway closed?
Delta 2603, go around, runway heading 2000.
Heading 2000, go around Delta 2603.
LaGuardia Tower.
Truck 2, runway 4 is closed, correct?
Yes, go on to runway 4 now. Proceed on runway 4, you have access.
Wow. I don't know how you stay calm in a situation like that. The work that air traffic controllers do is thankless, and they are on the go nonstop. Did air traffic control play a role in this? Was it a fire department issue? Was it the plane's mistake? I don't think it was the plane's mistake, if I'm being honest. But either way, one of my messages here is we've got to wait for the investigation before we decide that this is what caused it. Let's wait for the investigation. That's clear, though. A fire truck tried to cross the runway and collided with the Air Canada flight. The latest numbers that I have are 41 people taken to hospital with varying degrees of injury. 41. The pilot and co-pilot, they say, are dead. Scary, scary stuff. Let's hear from someone who was actually on the plane. This is passenger Jack Cabot talking to Fox News outside LaGuardia.
It was like a regular flight, like always, but as we were arriving, we came down really hard, and then we stopped really quickly, and then about 2 seconds later, we just had an absolute slam. Everybody was flying everywhere. I mean, the plane started veering off left and right, and there was. It was chaos. It didn't feel like there was anybody in control.
Okay, just a little bit of that. Fox News has the whole interview clip if you want to see it. And I'm sure that more passengers are going to be talking to the media. We'll get more from them and try and figure out exactly what happened here. But my God, what a tragedy. Imagine that. They survived the flight, no problem. It was an impact on landing. And that doesn't happen every day. I don't know what it's like out on the airfield. But if you're in a fire truck and you want to cross a runway, regardless of whether or not air traffic control has said you've got clearance, do you not check both ways? Because I would never go through an intersection, quote unquote, without looking both ways. And I would think you would see that Air Canada plane coming down. Here is a representative from the New York Port Authority. Her name is Catherine Garcia. This is her talking this morning. This is about 2.5 minutes long, and then I'm going to get to the Pierre Poilievre audio.
At approximately 11:40 last night, Air Canada Flight 8646, operated by Jazz, collided with the Port Authority aircraft rescue and firefighting vehicle on runway 4. The plane carried 72 passengers and 4 crew. The ARFF vehicle carried 2 officers. In accordance with our emergency plan, our mutual aid partners, FDNY and NYPD, immediately responded. Initial numbers indicate that 41 passengers and crew were transported to the hospital, as well as the ARF officers. At this time, we understand that 32 have been released, but there are also serious injuries. Sadly, the 2 pilots are confirmed deceased, and notifications are being made by Air Canada's care team at this time. Families were directed to the Air Canada ticket counter to be reunited with their families, and we understand that the 1 unaccompanied minor has been reunited with their families. It is anticipated that the airport will be closed at least until 2 p.m. this afternoon to facilitate the investigation by NTSB, which has already begun to be on site. At this time, I'll take any questions.
Hello, Shimon Progress from CNN. Can you just tell us the rescue vehicle that was on its way somewhere? Can you give us any details about what put them in that position?
Certainly, the vehicle was responding to another aircraft operated by United that had reported an issue with odor.
In terms of when the plane landed, how soon after did the crash occur from when it landed to when there was that collision?
The collision occurred during landing.
Do we know what speed the plane was moving when it collided with that vehicle?
NTSB will determine what the speed of the aircraft at the time.
Can you update the condition again of the 2 on the truck?
Absolutely. The 2 officers, the sergeant and the police officer, are in stable condition with no life-threatening injury.
We know what injuries they did possibly.
I have visited both of them in the hospital, as has the chairman, and they were able to speak, and we're notifying their families.
That is Port Authority Executive Director Catherine Garcia talking this morning at LaGuardia Airport. This is still a very fluid situation. News is going to be breaking on this all day long. Apologies, I got a couple of clips playing in the background, but either way, a horrible tragedy. I'm thinking about everybody involved here. This was really, really sad and also preventable. So let's figure out exactly what happened here. Also on my mind, and this is going to have to play into the investigation, is how safe are U.S. airports right now? They've got a partial government shutdown in America. In fact, there's ICE agents that are being redirected from their regular work to help out at airports with TSA officials because there's some of them who are just not getting paid, and they've said, that's enough. I'm not coming to work anymore if I'm not getting paid. And frankly, it would be hard for a lot of people to blame them in that scenario. That's where I'm going to leave this part of the pod, and that was just a last-minute add-on. My intention today was to dedicate the whole pod to getting you caught up on when Pierre Poilievre did his trip to the United States of America. He was there last week, and I listened to a lot of commentary over the weekend about how Pierre presented himself, about his message, and how it's resonating with a lot of Canadians. I'm happy to say that the vast majority of the comments I read are positive. People that think Pierre brought a good message and handled himself well. If nothing else, even if it didn't change your mind about how you feel about Pierre, you could at least feel like he was professional and represented Canada well to that large American audience. There's still some, though, that are trying to nitpick it to death. I kind of thought we reached a compromise, to be honest with you. I do. There were a lot of people who do not like Mark Carney, who could at least concede the point that he gave a good speech in Davos. You don't have to agree with the content of the speech to acknowledge that what Mark Carney said in Davos was well received by its intended audience, and there are many people who are praising him around the world. Well, the same thing is happening with Pierre Poilievre. I'm not saying this was his Davos moment, but he certainly reset the narrative and reset the impression that a lot of people have of him. And despite that, there's still a lot of folks on the left that won't even acknowledge that simple fact that Pierre did a good job. Well, I'll tell you what, between the Bloomberg interview, which was an hour, Joe Rogan, which was over 2 hours, and various other speeches, and the fact that we have a media that doesn't give a whole lot of attention to Pierre Poilievre. They do not like the conservatives in the vast majority of cases, so they're not covering this speech or his appearances in the way that Mark Carney would get coverage if he had done the exact same thing. So what I'm going to do in this pod is I'm just going to give you the Coles notes. Some of the highlights, some of the things that Pierre said. I've curated a collection of clips that I think you might find valuable. So give me about 20 to 30 minutes. I'm going to play as many clips as I can, and I'm going to try and keep the interruption and commentary on my end to a minimum. I want you to hear what Pierre had to say and let you process that. Now, it's not to say that I'm not going to offer any commentary. I certainly will. And before I do that, let me just declare my bias once again. I think it's essential that all members of the media do this. I have a bias. I'm a conservative. I like Pierre Poilievre. I'm one of those people that thinks Pierre Poilievre would have made an excellent prime minister for this country and helped us to reset this negative plane that we are on right now. I think Canada got it wrong last year, but that's just my opinion. Now that you know my bias, you know where I'm coming from in this pod. I don't want to change anyone's mind. I just want to help you understand or maybe make a few connections that you didn't when you hear some of this audio. I'll get to the Joe Rogan interview second. First off, I want to start off with the interview that Pierre did with Bloomberg. It's not getting a lot of attention, and I think it should because I thought the message was great. Let's go one by one. This first clip is about 48 seconds. Again, Pierre Poilievre talking to Bloomberg.
Who's the audience for the speeches that you've been giving on this trip? Is it members of the administration, Americans broadly? Who are you hoping to convey that message to?
The latter. I think first of all, I believe in leverage. We're, as a country, going into renewal of the USMCA, as you call it, CUSMA, as we call it. And one of the greatest leverage points we have as Canadians is the goodwill of Americans. Poll after poll shows Americans like Canadians. They also understand that doing business with us is good for them. So I wanted to accentuate that leverage. I wanted to bring some vivid illustrations of how life could be more affordable for Americans if we had a tariff-free pact between our two countries. And I think when you have Americans on side, the politicians will soon follow.
Important to note here, because Pierre is quite right, Americans do like Canadians. According to the latest numbers, 80% of Americans have a favorable opinion of Canadians. 80% of Americans have a favorable opinion of Canada. I think that's important because what Pierre said is absolutely right. One of the ways that we can have an impact in doing negotiations with the Americans is knowing that the American people are on our side. That puts a lot of pressure on the American leadership.
You mentioned the moment that we're in with this war roiling in the Middle East. And a lot of what you've been talking about is the potential for more security cooperation going forward. You've heard President Trump's entreaty that allies should get involved in that war and trying to protect the Strait of Hormuz. From where you sit, are you comfortable in committing Canadian troops to going to fight in that war?
We won't have Canadian ground troops. I can't comment on what our government is considering right now because we don't know what the request is. I'm not aware of any specific request by our allies to do something in particular, so I'd have to match up that request with what capabilities we have in the Canadian Armed Forces before I could answer. But one thing we can contribute is a massive increase in Canadian oil and gas production. We've got to be less reliant on the Middle East for our energy. We have the fourth biggest supply of oil. You know, if you want to consider the other ones, they're Venezuela, Iran, and Saudi Arabia. So if you want a supplier, who is it going to be out of those four? It's going to be Canada. We have the capacity to power the entire world's natural gas demand for 200 years with Canadian gas. We have cold weather to liquefy at 25% cheaper than in your Gulf Coast. We have shorter shipping distances to Europe and Asia than the U.S. So I think this is a moment for us to flex our energy muscles, unblock our resources, and become a real powerhouse in oil and gas.
I think that's a really important point from Pierre, and he's being honest. No, there's not been a request of Canada to assist in the Strait of Hormuz. I don't know. What are we annexing it? What are we liberating it? I don't know what they're doing over there. But either way, the world has become way too reliant on oil from the Middle East. Canada could be the solution there. And while we don't necessarily have the military capability to help right now, maybe Canada's contribution could be simply that. We just start putting out more oil. Wouldn't that help? If countries were less dependent on the Middle East, and wouldn't that be great for our economy if they were using Canadian oil? It would be good for jobs. It would be good for our dollar. It would be good for generating revenue to the federal government to make a little bit of progress in paying down our debt and equalizing our deficit. I think that's a great response from Pierre. Let's keep going here. Again, I'm just giving you the Coles notes, the parts that I think you should hear from Pierre's appearances in the U.S.
So your audience is Americans generally, but I imagine you want to convey this to the President of the United States, who's been pushing for tariffs not just with Canada, but countries around the world. Do you think that message can be resonant with him based on what you know of how he approaches trade?
Yes, because what the President really wants is to repatriate production and jobs to America. And I understand his argument that American jobs have been outsourced to places like China. There are literally cases of American factories closing so that Chinese factories can open. That doesn't happen with Canada. Our role in the American economy is to supply the goods for production. 70% of what we sell you is not for final consumption, but it goes into your production supply chain. So, give you an example. We sell about $100 billion of oil at huge price discounts, by the way. $100 billion, which you turn into $350 billion of final sales. So that means that the refinery worker in Baytown, Texas, is taking heavy crude from Canada and converting it into asphalt and jet fuel and other things like that, earning six-figure jobs. These are like the blue-collar, hardworking American people who the President wants to have bigger paychecks. Well, buying more Canadian goods will allow that. Buying more Canadian lumber will allow your youth to afford homes and your carpenters to swing more hammers. Buying more Canadian aluminum will allow your automakers to produce more F-Series Ford pickup trucks at lower prices to your consumers. So if the President's objective is more American-based production, importing the materials for that production from a reliable neighbor at good prices is part of that plan.
One of the things you're going to notice as you listen to Pierre Poilievre here in this Bloomberg interview and in the Joe Rogan interview, which I will get to in just a few minutes, I promise, is he's very well prepared. You can tell he's done his homework. He's thought a lot about how to get in the head of Donald Trump. And clearly, the reporter was thinking about that too. That question was set up on a tee for Pierre Poilievre to hit a home run. Yes, a lot of American factories have closed down in America, and those jobs have gone overseas. And the president doesn't like it, rightfully so. We wouldn't like that either. However, Canada isn't really the place that's taking those factories. We've always been a country that supplies goods to America, and they take those goods and make them into finished products that makes them 3 times what they paid us for them. We're good for the American economy. And maybe President Trump doesn't fully understand that little nuanced point. We're part of the solution, not part of the problem. The president, if he's as much of a Reagan conservative as he lets on, should agree that free trade should be the goal. And what Pierre Poilievre is going for here is not a low tariff relationship with the Americans. He's going for a no tariff relationship with the Americans.
So we're looking ahead to a by-election on April the 13th. We'll have to look beyond that as well. If the Liberals were to secure a majority, thin as that might be, how does that change your political calculus, the political calculus of the Conservative Party?
Look, my policies are not going to change. I'm going to continue to be absolutely monomaniacally obsessed with affordability, no matter what. Like everywhere I go in Canada, I meet moms who are struggling to feed their kids. I meet young people who are working 60-hour weeks and can barely afford their rent. I meet seniors who can't retire because it's just too expensive. So my obsession is going to be affordability, regardless of what happens in the by-elections or whether the election is in 3 months or in 3 years.
Interesting. Pierre Poilievre doesn't seem to think that this is over if the Liberal government, through floor crossing and by-elections, gets a majority government. He doesn't think this is over. He wouldn't say it's over. And I like that because I happen to agree this isn't over. I still think we're going to be having an election in the fall, to be perfectly honest with you. I don't see how we can avoid it, but that's something that I'll get into more in the coming days and weeks right here on Scott Fox After 9. There's just a couple more clips from this Bloomberg interview that I want to share with you. You're hearing a more measured Pierre Poilievre. You're hearing him being laser focused on affordability and a simple message to the Americans that we're stronger together, but we can only be together if there is a tariff-free relationship between our two countries.
What do you read into the popular response to the rupture comment in specific? It does seem like that resonated with a lot of Canadians who have been frustrated not just by the rhetoric, but with the economic uncertainty and tumult that we've seen over the last year.
Look, I mean, Canadians are a little bit startled and confused about how somehow we ended up in the crosshairs of tariffs and other comments. And so I understand why people feel the way they do. And what I've told my compatriots is let's focus on what we can control. We can't control what the president says or does. Only he controls that. So what can we control? And back at home, what we can control is unblocking our resources, reducing our tax burden, opening up free enterprise so that we can become strong, self-reliant. And if we're stronger at home, then we will have the unbreakable leverage abroad that will help us get what we want from our American partners, but other countries as well.
Okay, real sound message there from Pierre Poilievre. To wrap up this segment, this is him again on Bloomberg doing a sit-down interview in New York City. I want to play one more because this is something that a lot of folks who don't want to like Pierre Poilievre, who don't want to acknowledge that he did a good job. He represented himself well. He represented us well. He was very well spoken. He looked and sounded like a prime minister when he was doing all of these media appearances in America. One of the things that they really harp on is he's been the same guy all his life, and now he's trying to change. Now that he realizes the last strategy didn't work, he's trying to change. And the interviewer here from Bloomberg actually called him out on that. This is only about 40 seconds, but I think this is worth listening to about whether or not Pierre Poilievre has pivoted personally.
I saw a Canadian pollster write recently, we're seeing a calmer and more reflective Pierre Poilievre. Is this a concerted reset in any way, or is it not that?
I wouldn't say so. Look, I think I'm showing other parts of my persona that have always been there. I don't believe you can fake it. You just have to be yourself. But I want to show people all of the things that I can bring to the job as Prime Minister. And, sometimes in the job you have to be prosecutorial and aggressive, and other times you have to be reflective and strategic. So it's about more broadening the range rather than changing who I am, which I'll never do.
Okay, I thought that was a great way to answer that question. One of the things I want to point out here about the pod is if you want to share something specific, let me give you an example. I'm trying like crazy to convince my parents that the Pierre Poilievre that the media showed them on the news when we were having an election a year ago is not the real Pierre Poilievre. There was a real concerted effort amongst left-wing media in Canada to try and paint Pierre Poilievre out as some sort of an antichrist, as a devil who's going to come and slash and cut and fire people, and he's mean and he's angry and blah, blah, blah. They really tried to paint him out as some sort of a bad guy. Now more Canadians, as they watch the interview with Bloomberg and they watch the interview with Joe Rogan, are starting to realize maybe I had the wrong impression of Pierre Poilievre, and everybody should be able to admit if they got it wrong. We make mistakes. Sometimes we judge people unfairly. Despite the best efforts of the mainstream media, I think what's happening right now is people are starting to realize exactly who Pierre Poilievre is and what makes him tick. If you hear something in today's episode that you want to share with a family member or a friend, just a specific clip, all you have to do is get it to where that clip starts and press pause. Then in any of the apps, whether it's iHeartRadio or Apple Podcast, Amazon, YouTube, what have you, hit the share button and you can share from the point that you paused at so that whoever it is that you want to hear the message can hear it right there queued up. You don't have to tell them, go to 20 minutes and 15 seconds. You can send them the actual part.
I've got Dan Morgan here on the pod. Say hi, Dan.
Hey, how's it going today?
It's going good, man. Tell us who you are and what you do.
I'm Dan Morgan. I'm an attorney and a managing partner at Morgan & Morgan, which is America's largest injury law firm.
That's pretty awesome. I think I saw a billboard of yours recently that said 20 billion won. 20 billion is an insane number.
Yeah, 20 billion recovered. It's actually, I think, somewhere north, probably closer to 22, 23 after this year. And each year we get bigger and badder and our army grows. So the number will hopefully keep getting bigger and bigger as time goes on.
Awesome. So how does someone get in contact with Morgan & Morgan? What would I do if I got into an accident?
Probably the easiest way is dialing pound law. That's pound 529 from your cell phone. We are always open. Our call center is always waiting to take your call. 24/7, 365.
Wow. Dan Morgan from Morgan & Morgan, America's largest injury law firm. Thanks for coming by the show.
Thanks for having me. Visit forthepeople.com for an office near you.
One more from this Bloomberg interview, because again, I thought this was really great.
Do you have a relationship with him? Is he somebody you've met or talked to in the past?
I haven't met him, no.
Do you hope to?
I would welcome that if I become prime minister and the people put me in charge of the negotiations. Obviously, I would meet with the president. That's the relationship with Washington is the most important one that any prime minister has. But for the time being, we have a prime minister, and I respect that we don't want to cross wires.
Very, very good. One of the themes that you're going to notice in all of these Pierre Poilievre interviews and appearances is he was extremely respectful of Prime Minister Carney. He was very respectful. In fact, he said, we only have one prime minister at a time. I'm not going to criticize my prime minister. And he used those words, and he's right about that. I'm not going to criticize my prime minister on foreign soil. That's a classy thing, but that's going to come up again now that I'm ready to get into some of the clips from the Joe Rogan Experience. This is the Coles Notes. You didn't have to watch all of Joe or all of the Bloomberg interview to get just the good parts. That's what I'm giving you here today. I have curated a collection of clips from Pierre Poilievre on Joe Rogan. Let's get into it now.
Just making dollar bills with nothing behind it, nothing to back it.
This is the biggest fraud perpetrated on the working class people in the last 100 years.
Printing money is just insane. It's just the idea you just print more money. It's like, and people go, oh, okay.
Well, it looks painless at first, right. But if you have an economy with 10 apples and $10, it's $1 an apple. You double the number of dollars to 20, but you still only have 10 apples. Well, all of a sudden it's $2 an apple. And it's not that the cost of apples has gone up. It still costs the same resources to grow and pick the apples. It's that the price has gone up because the value of the money has gone down.
Right.
So in America, over the last 55 years, you've doubled the number of homes in America from about 70 million to 150 million. You know how much the money supply has grown? 30 times. So you have twice the homes, but 30 times the cash. So what's happened? Housing costs have gone up 15-fold in 55 years. And now an entire generation of kids can't afford homes. We have exactly the same problem in Canada. This is the biggest wealth transfer from the working class to the elites, from, I say, the have-nots to the have-yachts. And Washington and Wall Street love it, by the way, because it inflates the stock market, inflates the bureaucracy. Politicians get to spend, CEOs get their stocks inflated. But it destroys the working people, and we need to get back to hard money. Everything should be getting cheaper, by the way. You know, it takes 60 to 80% less resources to grow food. We grow 4 times the food on the same acre, get 4 times as much milk from the same cow. We use 80% less water and fertilizer. So why isn't it that food is not less expensive? It's because all of those gains are being erased by monetary inflation. So it's not that food is more costly, it's that the money we use to buy it has less purchasing power. And we need to do what the Swiss do, which is they don't print money. They have balanced budgets, they have almost no deficit, and they have almost zero inflation in Switzerland. They have the strongest money in the world, the Swiss franc. And we would all be better if we operated like the Swiss when it comes to our money.
So in a real-world scenario, it's like you take over Canada, how would you go about implementing this?
You got to cut bureaucracy, consultants, which consume, by the way, $26 billion of spending.
How big is your debt in Canada?
1.3-ish trillion.
Oh, that's baby debt.
It's compared to you. You guys are...
We're really ridiculous.
Wild. But, you know, you've gotten away with it because the American dollar is the reserve currency.
Just a little bit there of Pierre Poilievre talking to Joe Rogan about printing money. You know, it's amazing because we here in Canada, if you've been paying attention, have heard Pierre Poilievre use that example about apples before. If you have $10 and 10 apples, fine, it's $1 an apple. But if you print money and all of a sudden you have $20 and still 10 apples, the value of the money is less. That bids up the price. We've heard him give that example before, but the U.S. is just now starting to get introduced to Pierre Poilievre, and he is very quickly becoming a rock star on the right in America. There's Americans wondering, how the hell can we get this guy down here running our country? Because he seems to get it. And nobody in America has taken the time to explain it in simple terms the way Pierre explained it on the Joe Rogan Experience. And Americans, they're blown away. They can't believe this. This is like groundbreaking, earth-shattering. Why did nobody ever tell us that before? He's done really well for himself. One of the pundits that was on one of our mainstream media channels doing the breakdown, the dissection like I'm doing here on television, though, pointed out that no matter what happens with Pierre in the next election, whether he wins or loses, he is never going to need a job again because he is going to be very sought after in America once we're done with him here in Canada. Let's get to more of Pierre Poilievre on the Joe Rogan Experience.
That sounds awesome, but the great fear is that if you do have an impact on the environment, that impact is often permanent and that it's devastating. And I've seen some of the oil extraction that they've done up in Alberta, where you look at the area, it looks like scorched earth.
No. It's the most responsible oil extraction in the world.
But when you see these, what is that one area that often gets criticized?
Fort Mac.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, they're open pit mines. You open up a mine, you take out the bitumen, you separate the sand from the oil. You make it less viscous by putting diluent in it, and you ship it off. And then after the mining is done, they resurface it, and you wouldn't even know there was a mine there.
And there's no impact to groundwater, no impact to the environment.
I mean, there's an impact no matter what you do, but at the end of the day, the people who live there are very healthy and very happy, and they're the strongest supporters of the expansion of the oil sands. It's an incredible...
Because economically, it's
incredible. It's the best resource in the world. So it's like there's no decline rate. You guys have shale here, but as the years go by, you get less and less out of a shale reservoir. We have very little decline. We can keep producing and producing. We have what's called in situ. where there's an entire oil sands operation under your feet. You could be out in a forest hunting, and you wouldn't even know that under your feet they're extracting it through a whole system of pipes where they inject just steam vapor that loosens up the oil. It sinks down, it goes into another pipe, comes up to the top, and you can have beautiful, pristine nature. The bears, the deer, the birds, they don't even know that there's extraction happening under their feet. So we have the best industry, the most responsible industry anywhere in the world. It's been a really disgusting PR campaign by extremist environmentalists and, frankly, some of our competitors to try and make our industry look bad. But it's the best industry in the world.
Yeah, they got me.
Yeah,
I saw some videos on it, and I was like, "Oh my God, what are they doing to the ground? What are they doing to the earth? It looks horrible."
It's all bullshit. We have the.
It looks horrible.
Yeah, but I mean, that's just a superficial look at it. I'll take you for a tour in the oil sands.
Okay, I'm going to stop that clip there. But a couple of observations. The fact that he has a very intimate understanding of the oil extraction process in the oil sands of Alberta amazes me. Again, I told you, the guy did his homework. He understands how this works. I like that he stood up and finally called out the people that have been trying to call us out for years. Canadian oil is not dirty. We have been the victims of a massive negative public relations campaign, and it's wrong. Canada can absolutely be part of the world's energy problem. The solution to that problem. I stand corrected. We're not part of the problem. We are part of the solution. And that was a very good, common sense, easy to follow explanation for the most part. I don't know how well that resonated with Americans, but I think it's important to get that out there. And I think it's important that we've got somebody out there who is standing up for the Canadian oil industry, which helps fuel our entire country. A little bit more of Pierre Poilievre on the Joe Rogan Experience. Again, I'm just giving you a curated collection of the parts that I think you should hear.
Happen tomorrow.
It wouldn't necessarily be tomorrow, but in the next few weeks, if there were a non-confidence vote and the government lost it, then they go to an election. So it's kind of like the British system.
Interesting.
Yeah. Well, it is the British system, really. We adopted the British system almost identically.
So when you're campaigning, you're essentially, this is like a long game.
Yeah.
You're just laying out your strategy, laying out what you would do to make Canada a better place.
Yeah. Well, we have two roles. So I said I'm the leader of the opposition, but I'm also Prime Minister in waiting. So the notion is that the Canadian people should not only have a government, but they should have an alternative. And that alternative has two functions. Official opposition, it's actually called that. I think it's a proper noun, a capital O, official, capital O, opposition, and also government in waiting. So you have to be prosecuting the government, but you have to present to yourself to people in a way where they say, yeah, that guy or that team could actually be the government. So those are the dual roles that I have to carry out.
Pierre Poilievre did a basic civics lesson for the American audience there to explain how our system works. And by and large, I thought he did a very good job. In fact, I think there's Canadians who would appreciate hearing it the way Pierre Poilievre just put it. He has two roles as leader of the opposition. He has to prosecute the government and do his best to hold them to account, but he's also got to create a government that could be the government. A government is in waiting is what he called it. Typically, the government in waiting doesn't acknowledge themselves as the government in waiting, but hey, he did, so hey, let's roll with it. Typically, that would be a media role to point that out, but good on Pierre. And he's absolutely right. What he's doing in America is laying out a case for why the Americans should want to work with Canada, trying to make the Americans understand we're not necessarily the problem, we're actually part of the solution, but we can't get to that solution while there are tariffs in place, while you're treating us the same as you're treating all of the other countries who did take your jobs. The president has to start acknowledging he does need Canada for a lot of things. And Pierre Poilievre is trying to put it in perspective in plain and simple terms for him, his administration, and the American people, how much Canada matters to U.S. business operations. We're supplying the whole thing in a lot of cases. Let's talk about immigration.
What do you mean by pretending to be a refugee? How are they doing this?
They're not actually endangered in their home country. So they've come to be declared themselves as students and then wanting to stay, declaring a refugee status.
Oh, and this is common?
Yeah, it happens. It happens, and I mean, they just want to have a better life. So I don't begrudge them as people, but we can't spend money on social service, enhanced social services, advanced programs that we as Canadians don't get for people who are not paying into.
So you're not opposed to them being there. You're opposed to them getting. Canadian welfare?
I'm opposed to them. If they're not real refugees, they shouldn't be brought in as refugees. I think we have to distinguish between those people who are actually in danger in their home country, which is the definition of a refugee, and someone who just wants to come in excess of their proper immigration stream.
Is this that common that it's actually affecting our economy?
Right now, it's a challenge because we had a big number of international students and temporary foreign workers that came in very large numbers in like 2 or 3 years. We were bringing in about 1 million people a year, which in America's terms would be 10 million, like just if you're doing per capita. And it really caused a housing shortage. Like some places where you have 26 of these students living in one basement. So we're trying to unwind that now.
And how do you do that?
Well, when their work permit and their visitor visa runs out, then we have to encourage them to head back lawfully.
Right. But you don't want to do it ICE style.
No, I don't think we need to do that. I just think we have to be orderly and lawful about it.
And is that supported by the Canadian people?
Yes, because we're a very welcoming country. We're a nation of immigrants, but we're also a nation of laws. And there's a general consensus, like across the spectrum in Canada, that the population growth was too fast for like 4 or 5 years, and so we're trying to unwind that now.
I think that's one that a lot of people should hear. And I don't know that it's getting circulated nearly as much as it should, but that's an important point. Pierre Poilievre saying when your work visa or your student visa is up, it's time to go. And Joe flat out asked him, are you going to do like an ICE-style operation? Pierre said no. It's going to be a lot more orderly than that. But they're leaving. And they have to go. And I think, generally speaking, that is a message that a lot of Canadians would appreciate hearing, but that's not one of the clips that's being widely circulated in the mainstream media. They're just not giving it much attention, likely because that's common sense. And I think a lot of people, left or right, would agree with that.
That's what disturbed me the most about when Trudeau was running the country, that I didn't feel like that. I felt like he was manipulating people with woke politics and ideology, and that it was just this weird slippery slope that people were falling down where they're losing rights and you're losing your ability to express yourself. And right. it just really disturbed me because I always felt that Canada was like one of the freest places and one of the most open-minded places. And it just, I didn't understand how it could fall so quickly.
We still, we are a free country and we are a democracy. We have preserved that. My leader, I had this funny moment when Joe Biden came to Parliament Hill and I said, Mr. President, I'm Pierre Poilievre. I'm the leader of His Majesty's loyal opposition. And he said, loyal opposition? How can you be loyal and opposition at the same time? It's like, what the hell are you talking about? And because you guys have a system based on a republic, whereas ours is the British system. And in our system, the opposition is an act of loyalty. That's what our system, it means that if you are opposing the government, you're doing it out of loyalty to the good of the people. In our House of Commons, you have a half circle in your Congress. We have two sides in our Parliament. It's 2.5 sword lengths apart because they used to literally kill each other in the old English days. But the idea is the opposition is to prosecute the hell out of the government, make the mighty low. The most powerful people in the country are supposed to tremble every time they walk in that place because every mistake they made, every abuse of power, every corruption they might have done can be exposed and in front of all eyes. So our system is really designed to constrain the power of government through what we call Parliament. Like, I don't work for government. I work for Parliament, and Parliament works for the people. We call it the House of Commons because it's the House of the common people. It's green in there because they used to meet in the fields of England. And so I really view the role of our Parliament to limit the power of government, to maximize the power of the people, make people bigger, stronger, and more fulfilled by having the government narrowly focus on the things it's supposed to do. Roads, military, basic social safety net, borders, police, etc., but then leave people alone to live their lives. If I were to start a political party from scratch, it would be the mind your own damn business party. Just get the government to do its job well, do 4 or 5 things really well, and then let people live their lives.
Well, that sounds very reasonable.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, anybody that doesn't go along with that, anybody that's opposed to that doesn't even make sense.
No, look, like I said, the way I grew up and everything I've seen ever since, when I talk to farmers or factory workers, electricians, I find they know just as much or more than the so-called experts I encounter on Parliament Hill. Like back during COVID when all these governments were printing money and all the politicians and bankers said, oh, this is great. Well, look at all this money we get to spend. I'd walk around communities and I'd have like mechanics say, you know, we're going to have inflation. And I would say, yeah, it makes sense to me. And I'd go back to Parliament Hill and the experts would all say, no, there's not going to be any inflation. And sure enough, all that money filtered into the economy, bid up all the goods we buy, and everybody got smoked with higher prices. But the point is that it was the common people who don't study this stuff for a living, who don't read endless reports and studies, who could just figure out that if there's money pouring into the economy that's not matched by goods and services, it's going to bid up the cost of everything. So that's my experience and my ideology is the common guy knows how to make his own decisions. We need to empower him to do that.
Amen. Get government out of our lives. Government should focus on doing the things that we expect government to do. Military, roads, healthcare, that sort of thing. And then piss off. Let people live their lives. That was a great moment from the interview that Pierre did with Joe Rogan. I know that I'm coming up to time, and I promised you a concise summary of the main highlights from Pierre on the Joe Rogan Experience and in that Bloomberg interview. There's just a couple more clips that I want to play for you that people are talking about or that I thought are worth hearing.
So there's a narrative in America, and the narrative is that you were about to win and your party was about to win, but then Trump came along and said he was going to turn Canada into the 51st state, and everybody went crazy. Is that accurate?
I wouldn't say they went crazy. I mean, it was.
They got very upset.
They should be upset, though. I mean,
well, it's a crazy thing to say.
It is a crazy thing to say. Canada's not for sale. We're never going to be the 51st state. We love Americans as neighbors and friends, but we want to be uniquely and we want to be sovereign as Canadians. It's our country. It's where we grow up. You're a patriot as an American. I'm a patriot as a Canadian. It's where my grandfather arrived. It's where our collective ancestors put on military uniforms and sailed to fight wars. It's where our grandkids are going to live. We're very proudly Canadian. So we're never going to be the 51st state. And I just wish he'd knock that shit off so that we can get back to talking about the things that we can do as two separate but two separate countries that are actually friends.
Did that really have that much of an effect up there? Like, did people take him seriously?
I think at first everyone thought it was a joke. Because we've always had these jokes like, one day we're going to take over Vermont and Detroit should be part of Canada and all that stuff. But then he kept saying it, and it became a lot of people got upset about it, and I think understandably so.
Understandably, yeah. I mean, it's a crazy thing to say.
It is a crazy thing to say.
I talked to him on the phone about it. It was like so funny. He's like, at first I was joking, but then people were like, it's a good idea. That's not a good idea.
What he's saying that, I can assure him of that. But and the tariffs aren't a good idea either. We should get the tariffs out. Because there's so much we could be doing together as neighbors and partners if we got rid of those tariffs. I think what are the biggest problems in America today? Affordability, security. And we can help with both. We knock the tariffs down. Let's look at affordability. We got the fourth biggest supply of oil anywhere on Earth. You guys pay a huge price discount for our oil because we're effectively, all our infrastructure to ship it is north-south. And it's a very unique heavy oil. So we accept, unfortunately, and for now, a price discount on the oil we send you, which can translate into more jobs and paychecks, but also lower energy prices. You've got $5 a gallon right now in lots of places in America. I want to produce more so we can sell 2 million more barrels of Canadian oil into the U.S. market. And then there's housing. You've got huge housing pressures on young people. They can't afford a place to live. We're the biggest supplier of lumber for home building of any country that exports to the United States. We've got very low cost but high quality softwood lumber we could be shipping. Or the best selling truck in America for 45 years now is the Ford Series. It's aluminum. It's a military grade aluminum body. You guys can't make enough aluminum here. You don't have enough bauxite or electricity to convert it into alumina and aluminum. You get your aluminum from us. A tariff does not bring the production to America. It raises the price of the aluminum and therefore the F-Series truck. Get rid of that tariff. You lower taxes. You lower the cost of an F-Series truck for the miner in Appalachia or the electrician in Ohio. And that's just on the affordability side. There's a lot we can do with our minerals to make the continent a hell of a lot safer as well. So I think it's in America's interest to come towards a tariff-free deal.
And that was overall the theme of what Pierre Poilievre had to say when he was on the Joe Rogan Experience. I hope that this was helpful. The media is not giving it the attention it deserves, and that's just right par for the course for the mainstream media in Canada. They're not going to make the opposition leader, when it's a conservative, look appealing. They're just not going to give him the same fair shake that they will give the Liberal government. That's just a reality. I think most objective people can see that. But since we're talking about being reasonable, I think this is a good clip to end it on. Pierre Poilievre doing an interview in New York after he gave a speech. A lot of business leaders showed up to hear what Pierre had to say. Being able to look down the line and seeing, hey, this may be the guy that we eventually need to deal with as Prime Minister of Canada. This was an important thing that Pierre said, and I think that this is the kind of civility that Canadians, by and large, are looking for in our politics. Listen to Pierre.
We heard Prime Minister Carney recently lay out a vision and a partnership with China. So when you think about, the strains in the relationship of the United States, and I think that's partly why he did that, what are the differences that you can think about in trade between China and, say, the United States?
Well, I'm not going to disparage my prime minister on foreign turf, so I won't counter his position here. There'll be plenty of time for that in the House of Commons. Please tune in at 2:15 Monday through Thursday for question period, and we'll try to put on a good show. So have your popcorn ready.
That's the kind of civility that we need in our politics. We need to have a respectful dialogue. And by the way, not just amongst the politicians, I mean amongst regular Canadians. It is remarkable how little folks that are firmly on the left and folks that are firmly on the right can communicate. We used to be able to do that, no problem. We used to be able to talk out our issues. And you know what? If you were pro-government spending and you felt firmly that Canada should be spending to help out the rest of the world and create a stronger social safety net, and you were up against a conservative who said, no, we need to live within our means and we need balanced budgets and all that sort of thing, we could talk it out in a respectful way, but now it seems like all civility is gone. That's part of the reason that I do this podcast, though, every day. I try and present to you a different narrative than what you get from the mainstream media, because you're not getting the full story when you watch the news. It's just a fact. Any objective person should be able to acknowledge that. 2 more clips from Joe Rogan.
In addition, so I like this idea that actually, believe it or not, that Bill Clinton and the Republicans did in the 90s in the U.S. It was called the pay-go law. It was a very simple principle. Every time the administration wanted to bring in a new dollar of spending, they had to match it with a dollar of savings. So there was no extra net spending for like 8 years. And that's when your government balanced its budget and paid off $400 billion of debt. That law lapsed in 2002, and immediately after that, America went back into deficits, and you haven't emerged. You've been in deficit now for 25 years. This is about internalizing scarcity. Every creature in the universe, every bird in the trees, every fish in the seas has to live with scarcity, maximizing use of scarce resources. The only creature who doesn't do that is the politician, because he's always using someone else's money. Right? It's like, oh, well, I'll just print it or borrow it or tax it. It's not my money. And so they routinely show up to their cabinet meetings and say, well, I've got a new idea. It's $100 million. Where are you going to get it? I don't know. We'll print it. We'll borrow it. We'll tax it. Not my money. But if you had a law saying you can't actually bring a proposal to cabinet unless you have matching savings to pay for it, well, then you'd have these politicians walking up and down the hallways in their departments looking for waste and like rooting it out. So instead of making the single mom, the senior, or the small business owner live with scarcity, I want the politicians and bureaucrats to live with scarcity. And that's what I would impose by law on my government.
Well, it's just a rational way to deal with the problem. Like, don't spend money unless you could save money.
Exactly.
That's how you balance things out. I mean, Clinton did balance the budget.
He did.
During his time, and people forget that because we've always assumed that there's always been this extraordinary debt, but that's not the case. During the 1990s, I mean, he did a fantastic job at that.
Fact-checked and true. They're absolutely right about that. Balanced budgets are possible. But it requires, because of the nature of the politician, legislation, which Pierre has said he will put in place, that for every dollar of new spending, you must find a dollar of savings in the current budget. That's how you get a balanced budget. It's very, very basic. You want to spend $1, you got to save another $1. That's all there is to it. Imagine if that was in law, how much more accountable a government we would have. Last one.
Hey, listen, if the government that's in power now steals all my ideas and does the things I want to do, then I've won. Because that's why I came here. I didn't just do it so that I could have my name on the door. So I keep saying to the Prime Minister, steal my ideas.
Right. But he doesn't want to.
Well, I won't criticize him on foreign soil. I
understand.
But
good for you.
Yeah, I mean, we have a mutual respect.
That's such a Canadian thing to do.
That is a very Canadian thing to do.
So polite. That's what I've said about Canadians. They're so polite.
By the way, in there, Pierre revealed that he was in regular communication with Prime Minister Carney. They texted each other updates while Prime Minister Carney was over vacationing in Rome and while Pierre Poilievre was touring America. They were in regular contact, keeping each other up to date on what's happening. Again, that's the kind of civility that I want from our politicians. I'm going to say, great job, Pierre Poilievre. I thought he represented himself and our country very, very well when he did his trip to America. But now it's back to business. Today is going to be full of fireworks. You've got the House of Commons that gets back after a short break, and you get the Ontario legislature, which gets back after a massive break. You know, the Ontario government, the legislature, hasn't sat since the 11th of December. The 11th of December. Their Christmas break went from December the 12th until March the 23rd. That is just one example of how Doug Ford is ducking accountability. And I'll be talking a lot about that and whatever else comes out of today, tomorrow on Scott Fox After 9. Friends, have yourselves a dynamite day, and I will catch you right back here in less than 24 hours.